Hi, you're watching Reddit Confessions. Let's just say, no one expected her to scream before coffee. I was standing in the kitchen reheating 3-day-old lasagna when I heard the front door unlock. Click, creak, slam. High heels on tile. She was back. My wife swept into the house dragging a silver suitcase behind her. The kind with 360 degrees wheels that glided like it was floating. Her blazer was perfectly pressed. Her smile, even more polished. That kind of grin you see in hotel brochures. She didn't say, "Hi," didn't ask how I'd been. She spun around once, arms outstretched, and said, "Guess who just crushed her presentation in Chicago?" I blinked. "Didn't you go to Denver?" Her smile twitched, just slightly. "Oh, right, Denver. I meant Denver." I nodded slowly, already clutching my fork a little tighter than necessary. She walked past me, kissed me lightly on the forehead, and wheeled the suitcase into the bedroom. That's when I saw it. A neon pink luggage tag. Property of Horizon Suites. We don't stay at Horizon Suites. We have a Marriott membership. Always have. My stomach made a noise I didn't like. I followed her down the hallway, pretending to scroll on my phone. She started unpacking. Blouses, heels, perfume bottle I'd never seen before. And then something odd. A second toothbrush. I watched her hand hesitate for half a second before she shoved it deep into the drawer like she was hiding evidence. I said nothing, just watched. Then, I left the room and quietly grabbed the security cam feed from the hallway. Yeah, I'd installed it a few months ago when someone stole a package. She never paid attention to the app. When I pulled up the footage, I expected to see her walking in. I didn't expect to see him carrying the suitcase. A man, not a cab driver. Not hotel staff. A man in gym shorts and a wrinkled t-shirt. He walked her up the driveway, kissed her before the door even opened, and handed her the silver suitcase like he was giving her back her dignity. She looked thrilled, until she saw me freeze the footage and turn the iPad around. She dropped her mug, didn't even flinch at the crash. Her smile vanished. Her hands started shaking, and that was just the start. She stood frozen in the doorway, pieces of the broken mug scattered around her feet. I didn't say a word. I just let the image on the screen hang there, like a silent judge. Her eyes kept flicking between the iPad and me, calculating, spinning, trying to find a version of reality where this wasn't what it clearly was. But there wasn't one. The man in the footage wasn't some hotel concierge or Uber driver. He wore no badge, no logo, no urgency in his body language. He looked comfortable. Too comfortable. And the way his hand lingered on her lower back when he handed off the suitcase? That wasn't a colleague. That was a man who believed he had permission. Finally, she laughed. But it came out wrong. Too sharp, too forced. "You're seriously checking the security footage now? What? Am I under surveillance?" she said, stepping carefully around the shards of porcelain. "I didn't check it now," I said, setting the iPad down slowly. "I checked it this morning, before you even walked through the door." She blinked hard, her mouth tightening. "That's insane, Merrill." "What's insane is thinking I wouldn't notice a stranger kissing you on our front steps," I replied, quieter than I expected. My heart was beating in my throat, not from anger but from shame, embarrassment. I didn't want to be here. I didn't want to be this man. She walked into the kitchen, grabbing paper towels to clean up the mess like it was just a normal morning. "It wasn't like that," she muttered. "It's not what it looks like." I almost laughed. Almost. But instead, I just said, "I'm tired of hearing that sentence from people who know exactly what it looks like." She froze again. I could tell she was digging for a story, something halfway believable, something that could let her climb back into the version of her life where I didn't know. But I knew, because I'd already found the text message. Not on her phone, she'd deleted it. But she forgot to unsync her smartwatch from the bathroom charger. One swipe left on the notification screen, and there it was. "Thanks for the weekend, gorgeous. I'll be dreaming of room 403. She hadn't even bothered to mute him. The message had been sitting there for over a day. I'd seen it while brushing my teeth the night before. It was the reason I pulled the security footage in the first place. I handed her the watch. She glanced at the screen and didn't say a word. Her hands trembled as she set it down. No more explanations. No more lies. I'm not even angry, I said. I'm just trying to understand when I stopped being enough. She finally looked at me, really looked at me, and for the first time in years, I saw something close to fear in her eyes. Not fear of me, but fear of what would come next. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just opened the drawer, pulled out a manila envelope, and placed it gently on the counter. Inside, printed screenshots, the watch, a list of hotel charges from our shared credit card, and the contact info of the man I suspected she'd been seeing. She looked at it like it might explode. "Read it," I said, then walked out the door. She didn't follow me, and I didn't look back. I drove aimlessly for nearly an hour, passing the same gas station 3 times before I realized I wasn't actually headed anywhere. My hands were glued to the steering wheel like they didn't trust me to let go. Every time I blinked, I saw that stupid message on her watch. Room 403. I imagined it like a movie scene, her laughing, maybe drinking wine on the hotel bed, while some stranger unbuttoned his shirt and told her how beautiful she looked under the city lights. And somewhere in the back of her mind, she must have known I'd be home, probably folding laundry or microwaving leftovers, waiting for a text that never came. The thing that gutted me the most? Not the betrayal itself, but how easy it was for her to come back and act like nothing happened. No hesitation, no guilt, just that polished smile and perfectly curated lie about Denver? Or was it Chicago? She hadn't even bothered to remember which city she told me. That detail alone gnawed at me. If you're going to cheat, at least have the decency to keep your story straight. I ended up in the parking lot of a 24-hour diner we used to go to before things got weird. Before her job took over her life and I became some kind of background noise in my own marriage. I stared through the windshield at the flickering neon sign and wondered when exactly I stopped being someone she loved and started being just convenient. Then my phone buzzed. A number I didn't recognize. At first, I ignored it, thinking it might be a scam call. But something in my gut told me to answer. I tapped the green icon and pressed the phone to my ear. "Is this Merrill?" A male voice asked, cautious but direct. "Yeah." "Who's this?" A pause. Then, "I think we need to talk. About Daphne." My chest tightened. "Who is this?" "My name's Curtis. I think your wife's been seeing my brother." I didn't say anything. "I found a note," he continued, "in my brother's glove compartment. It had your address on it and her name. There were receipts, hotel bookings, stuff I wish I hadn't seen." The diner lights buzzed in the background as I sat there in stunned silence. "He's not a bad guy," Curtis added quickly. "But what they're doing, it's not right. And it's not just you. There's another guy too." "What do you mean another guy?" "She's been texting 2 different phones. One's my brother's. The other, I don't know who it belongs to, but your name keeps coming up. I thought you should know." I wanted to throw up. This wasn't a one-time mistake. This was coordinated, calculated, professional. "She's still in your house, right?" Curtis asked. I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. "Yeah." "Then be careful. She's not being honest with anyone. And I don't think she's done yet." The line went dead before I could ask anything else. I sat there for another hour trying to make sense of it all. My wife, the woman I once thought couldn't lie about what she had for lunch, was apparently juggling multiple affairs with multiple men, and somehow I'd been the last to know. Not even her last. Just the quiet one, the safe one. But I wasn't feeling safe anymore. I was feeling like I'd been sleeping next to a stranger. And when I finally walked back into our house, the stranger was sitting at the kitchen table, with my laptop open, and tears in her eyes. She didn't look up right away, just sat there hunched over the keyboard, her hand gripping the side of my laptop like she was trying to keep it from running away. The screen glowed off her face in a pale blue hue, and her eyes were glassy. Not just with tears, but with something else. Guilt? Panic? Maybe both. The silence in the kitchen was so thick it felt like another person in the room. I stood just inside the doorway, keys still in my hand, heart thudding like it wanted to escape through my ribs. I didn't say anything. I just stared. Finally, she exhaled and spoke, her voice barely audible. You weren't supposed to see that. It took me a second to realize she wasn't talking about what I saw on the security footage. She was talking about what she was looking at now on my laptop. I walked forward slowly, my sneakers making a soft squeak on the tile. I glanced at the screen and felt my stomach drop. The folder was open, the one I'd labeled receipts. Inside were screenshots, phone backups, synced emails, the hotel invoice I downloaded with both her and a second man's name listed. Not the same guy from the security footage. A different name, a different room, a different night. Daphne finally looked up at me, and for a split second, I thought she might actually confess. Say something, anything that made her seem human again. But instead, she tried to play it smart. Where did you get all this? She asked, as if I was the one who'd broken the trust. Did you hack into my email? I almost laughed. I was so far past the point of needing her permission to know the truth. You left your phone backup running on the cloud, I said calmly. You didn't log out of our shared storage folder. Half the stuff was synced automatically. Her lips parted, but no words came. She was caught, tangled in the mess of her own making, and the look in her eyes told me she knew it was over. But still, she tried to regain control. Merrill, listen. I know how this looks, but it's... I cut her off. Don't try to tell me it's complicated or that I don't understand. You're right. I don't understand. I don't understand how someone who promised to love me could fly across the country to be with two different men in two different hotels and come home with a smile like nothing happened. She stood up suddenly, pushing the chair back with a harsh scrape. You were always so passive, she snapped. You never asked me where I was going. You never cared what I needed. You just existed. You were safe, boring, predictable. There it was. The truth. Raw, ugly, and so much worse than I expected. I was loyal, I replied, trying to hold back the lump in my throat. I was present. I showed up. I thought that mattered. She looked like she wanted to scream, but instead she just shook her head and whispered, I didn't want you to find out like this. Then why did you leave breadcrumbs everywhere? I asked. Why did you keep the hotel invoices? Why didn't you delete the synced photos? Why did you let me be the one to figure it all out like some pathetic detective piecing together his own humiliation? Her shoulders slumped. I could see it now, how exhausted she looked. Not from guilt, but from the pressure of keeping everything hidden. From balancing two lives and still trying to come home and play wife. And then she said something I didn't expect. He wasn't supposed to fall in love with me. It wasn't an apology. It was a confession. One that didn't make anything better. Only worse. There was something about the way she said it. He wasn't supposed to fall in love with me. That didn't sound like regret. It sounded like frustration. Like an inconvenience. As if his feelings had ruined whatever fantasy world she'd constructed where she could cheat, lie, come home, and still control the narrative. I just stood there, watching her unravel, trying to reconcile the woman I thought I married with the stranger unraveling in front of me. Was that the plan? I asked slowly, trying to keep my voice level. Sleep with him, keep it casual, and come home to me when you got bored? She didn't answer. She just rubbed her forehead and whispered, It wasn't supposed to go that far. I'd heard that line before. In movies, in gossip, in stories people tell themselves so they can sleep at night. But it hit different when you're the one standing in the debris. I walked over to the laptop and closed it gently. The silence stretched between us like a tightrope. I just need time to explain everything, she said finally, her voice softer now. I didn't plan for this, for any of it. But I had nothing left to say. I walked upstairs without another word and locked myself in the bathroom. Not to cry, not to scream, just to breathe. The only sound was the vent humming above my head and the faint buzz of my phone vibrating in my pocket. It was another unknown number. I almost ignored it again, but something told me to answer. Merrill? The voice was female this time. Hesitant. Careful. Yeah. Who's this? This is Ella. I know this is awkward, but I thought you should know I'm dating a guy named Damon. And I think he's also seeing your wife. I didn't respond. I just stared at the mirror, at my own exhausted face staring back, wondering how deep this rabbit hole went. I found her name in his phone, she continued. There were messages, hotel bookings, photos. It wasn't just physical. He told her he loved her. Room 403? I asked before I could stop myself. A pause. Yeah, that's the one. My knees nearly buckled. I sat down on the edge of the bathtub, gripping my phone like it might disappear if I loosened my fingers. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know this woman, but somehow, she was the only person who felt real in that moment. She knew about you? I asked. I don't think she cared, Ella said bluntly. He's a manipulator, but she wasn't innocent. I'm not calling to blame you or anything. I thought you should know, in case you didn't. I know now, I said. My voice sounded hollow, like someone else's. I'm sorry, she whispered. You didn't deserve this. I wanted to thank her. I wanted to ask her 100 more questions. But instead, I just hung up. I couldn't take in any more. I stared at the closed bathroom door, imagining Daphne on the other side. Maybe still at the kitchen table, maybe deleting files, maybe calling one of them in a panic. But one thing was clear. This wasn't just betrayal. It was orchestration. She'd been living a double life, maybe even a triple one, and I had no idea how far it went. I didn't know if this Damon guy was the only one, or if the stranger on the security cam had been a completely different person altogether. How many hotel rooms? How many lies? I had reached the part of the story where you stop asking why and start asking how to get out. But I wasn't going to rush. I had one more move to make, and it started with something she'd never expect. I didn't sleep that night. I lay there with my eyes open, staring at the ceiling while Daphne pretended to sleep beside me. I could hear her breathing, too evenly, too deliberately. Every so often, she shifted, like she was waiting for me to say something. I didn't. Not yet. I wasn't done watching. I wasn't done listening. I needed to see how far she'd go pretending nothing was broken. By morning, the mask was back on her face. She made coffee like she always did, wore one of my favorite sweaters. She even hummed. I sat across from her at the table, watching her stir sugar into her mug with a smile that should have belonged to someone else. I'd seen crocodiles blink with more sincerity. She glanced at me and said, I was thinking we could do something tonight. Just the two of us. Reset, you know? Reset. That word bounced around in my head like a stray bullet. I nodded slowly, keeping my expression neutral. Dinner sounds good, I said, then pushed back my chair and left the room before she could say anything else. The rest of the day, I moved like a ghost. At work, I stared at my computer screen, doing nothing, answering no one. I was supposed to be troubleshooting data logs for a logistics client, but I couldn't focus. My mind kept circling back to that folder. The watch message, Curtis's warning, Ella's voice on the phone. Room 403. I wondered how many stories she had rehearsed over time, how many backup lies she had waiting in case one started to crack. And I wondered who exactly I'd married, because the woman smiling over coffee this morning was not the woman I thought I had built a life with. That evening, I set the table with her favorite wine. I lit candles. I even made her that ridiculous shrimp risotto she claimed to love but always picked the onions out of. She came downstairs wearing a silk dress I hadn't seen in a long time, hair done up like we were going out for an anniversary. You really went all out, she said, looking genuinely touched. Big night, I replied. She smiled and sat down. We talked about shallow things, her coworkers, the weather, a new movie she wanted to see. It all felt hollow, but I smiled along, nodded, played my part like the good little background husband she'd assumed I'd always be. Until dessert. She was halfway through a spoonful of chocolate mousse when I reached under the table and placed a sealed manila envelope beside her wine glass. She paused mid-bite, her eyes narrowing. What's this? I just leaned back and watched her. Open it. Slowly, she peeled it open. Her fingers trembled slightly. Inside was a copy of the hotel invoice from Chicago, yes, Chicago, not Denver, showing 2 guests listed for room 403. Below, it was a printed screenshot of the message from her watch. And under that, a photo of her kissing the man outside our house from the security footage. I printed it in full color. Her face drained. She didn't move for a long time, just stared at the papers like they might set her on fire. I broke the silence. You said he wasn't supposed to fall in love with you. What you didn't say is that you never planned on falling for him either, right? Still, she said nothing. Here's the thing, I continued, voice low. You didn't just cheat on me. You made me doubt every instinct I ever had. You made me feel crazy for noticing the wrong perfume, for asking the wrong question. And now, you want a reset, like it's a software update. She finally looked at me then, tears welling in her eyes, but I didn't feel anything. Not pity, not anger, just nothing. I'm not yelling, I said, almost surprised by it myself, because I've already decided something. She swallowed hard. What? I'm not going to scream, or beg, or cry. I'm just going to leave, quietly, carefully. And when I'm gone, you'll realize you don't know who you are without someone to lie to. And with that, I stood up. I didn't touch her, didn't wait for a response. I left her sitting there, candlelight flickering over the ruin she caused. I didn't sleep that night either. After leaving her at the dinner table, I went upstairs, locked the door behind me, and began packing. No dramatic music, no storm outside the window, just silence. I moved slowly, drawer by drawer, shelf by shelf, gathering the essentials like someone preparing for a long trip they didn't plan but suddenly needed to take. I left the wedding photos on the dresser. I didn't want them. They felt like props from a life that never really belonged to me. Around 2 a.m., I heard her knock on the door, softly at first, then louder. Merrill, please, just talk to me. I didn't respond. Merrill, I made mistakes. I know that. I was confused. You've always been so distant. I didn't know how to reach you anymore. That part stung a little. She was rewriting history while I was still living in it. I hadn't been distant. I've been cautious, careful, hesitant to push too hard because I always felt like I was one wrong question away from becoming the man she left. And maybe that was my fault, but it didn't excuse the betrayal. After a while, the knocking stopped. She slid a note under the door. I didn't read it until the sun came up. It said, "Please don't go. Let's fix this. I love you. We can start over." But it was too late. You don't start over with someone who only cries when they're caught. By 6 a.m., I had everything packed into my car, 2 suitcases, a box of documents, and my comic book collection. I left the rest. Clothes can be replaced. Dignity can't. Before I walked out, I placed one last envelope on the kitchen counter. It contained a copy of the legal separation papers I'd quietly printed the week before, along with a note that simply read, "You'll be hearing from me. Don't contact me unless it's through the attorney." No shouting, no slamming doors, just quiet, which honestly hurt more. I drove to my brother's cabin 2 hours outside the city. He was out of the country for work and had offered it to me months ago, just in case I needed to clear my head. Funny how casually he'd said that, like he somehow knew this was coming before I did. Maybe everyone did. The first night in the cabin was the strangest kind of peaceful. No emails, no fake smiles, no wondering where she was or who she was texting. Just me, the trees outside, and the overwhelming silence of starting over. But just when I thought I'd finally escaped the noise, my phone buzzed. It wasn't Daphne. It was Ella, the woman who had called me days ago to warn me about Damon, the man who'd apparently also been seeing my wife. Her message was short, just one line. "I think you should see this. It's about room 403, and it's worse than we thought." My heart kicked back into overdrive. I replied instantly, "What is it?" A few seconds later, a photo came through. It was a selfie taken by Damon. He was standing in front of a mirror, shirtless, smiling. But that wasn't what caught my attention. What caught my attention was the reflection in the background. My wife, sleeping in bed, wearing a shirt that belonged to me. I stared at the photo Ella sent me for what felt like hours. Not because I was surprised. By now, nothing about Daphne's double life shocked me, but because of that one detail. The shirt. My shirt. The one she always claimed was too soft to give away. The one she slept in when we were still happy. She'd taken something of mine into someone else's bed. Like dragging pieces of our life into the wreckage without permission. It was the final twist of the knife, and for a moment it made me feel like a ghost, present but no longer real. But then something strange happened. I felt calm. There was no explosion of rage. No breakdown. Just a quiet, clear realization. This was no longer my story. It was hers. The betrayal, the lies, the men, the rooms, all hers. I had been a character in her fiction for too long. It was time to write something of my own. I texted Ella back, "Thank you. That's the last piece I needed." She replied with a simple heart emoji. Nothing dramatic. Just solidarity. In the days that followed, I finalized the legal paperwork. I shut down our joint accounts. I canceled all automatic payments she might still benefit from. I even called the airline and used the miles we'd earned together to book a one-way flight to Portland, a city I'd always wanted to live in but never had the nerve to try. Daphne used to say I'd hate the rain, but maybe I needed the rain. Maybe it would wash away everything she left behind. The last thing I did before I left the cabin was delete the folder labeled receipts. I didn't need the evidence anymore. I had the truth, and that was enough. 3 weeks later, I started a new job. Smaller company, better people. I rented a small apartment with creaky floors and ugly countertops, but it was mine. And every night, when I sat by the window and listened to the drizzle outside, I didn't feel pathetic anymore. I felt free. As for Daphne, she emailed me once. A long message about closure, confusion, and how she never stopped loving me. I didn't respond, not because I hated her, but because I finally loved myself more than the version of me who tolerated that kind of love. So if you're still with me, reading this, wondering if it's better to stay quiet and survive, or to walk away and rebuild, walk quietly, with your head high, because what's waiting on the other side is not revenge. It's not justice. It's peace. And peace is worth everything. Thanks for listening. You're watching Reddit Confessions. If you've ever experienced a moment in history, personal or global, that changed your path completely, tell us in the comments. We'd love to hear your story. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and join us for more unbelievable stories next time on Reddit Confessions.